Welcome to the Infidelity Hub. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. New York nights are never quiet. This city never sleeps. But everything came to a standstill for one man this night. Between the twinkling lights of tall buildings and the cars rushing down the streets, a black Mercedes was racing without a floor. Ryan Carter, sitting in the driver's seat, was lost in his thoughts. His world had changed in a matter of hours. Ryan, once one of New York's most respected businessmen, was now a victim of humiliation and deception. The man who had built an empire with his hard work and ability was now ousted from that empire. The woman he had promised would be with him for the rest of his life was the one who stabbed him in the back. But the biggest shock came to him when all this was done not by his wife Emily alone, but by his real brother Lucas. Tonight was the darkest night of his life. But in a moment, he understood that it was not his defeat. It was only a beginning. A few hours earlier, he was at the Carter family estate. A lavish dinner party was held in honor of her father, William Carter. There were the city's biggest business tycoons, politicians, and influential people. This party was a felicitation ceremony in appearance, but there was a big conspiracy behind it. As Ryan entered the hall, he saw his wife Emily and his brother Lucas standing side by side. There was a strange joy on both of their faces. Ryan felt a little strange seeing this, but he ignored it. In the middle of the party, when everyone was having a drink together, Lucas suddenly looked at Ryan and laughed, saying, "So, big brother, now that you've made the biggest mistake of your career, how do you feel?" Ryan looked at him in astonishment. What did he do that made him a mistake? Before he could say anything, Emily stepped forward and said, "Oh, Lucas, don't be too strict. After all, some people are born to win and some people just to see others." Everyone at the party laughed, but Ryan didn't fully understand what was going on until now. Then his father, William Carter, said in a serious voice, "Ryan, I can't see you being part of this company anymore. You constantly made wrong decisions which hurt our company. I think it's time we let you go of this family and business." Ryan felt as if someone had stabbed him in the chest. His own father, whom he had always idolized, stood against him today. "Papa, why do you say that?" he said, startled. Lucas stepped forward and smiled and said, "Because now I'm going to take your place. And yes, Emily is no longer just your wife. He is with me now." There was silence in the party hall for a moment, but then suddenly everyone started laughing loudly. It was a conspiracy that had been going on for months. Emily and Lucas not only betrayed him, but also planned to prove him a failure in front of his father. Ryan looked at his wife. The woman he had loved so much stood with his worst enemy today. There was no hatred in his eyes, but cold absurdity. "How long did you two plan this?" said Ryan softly. There was no anger or pain in his voice, just emptiness. Emily took a sip of her drink and said, "For a few months. But if you weren't so blind, you might have seen it already." Ryan took a deep breath. He knew that if he spoke a word here, no one would listen to him. So he left without saying anything. As he sat in his car, his mind was calm. He wasn't angry, he wasn't crying. But deep inside, there was a flame burning in his mind. He picked up the phone and called his most trusted friend and attorney, Danielle Hunter. "Daniel, I need your help. I've just tried to be good enough so far, but now it's time for me to fight for myself." Danielle replied without question, "I'm waiting for you, Ryan. This game will now be played according to you." Ryan hung up the phone and drove his car quickly through the busy streets of New York. He was no longer weak. Now, he was going to get his revenge. The black Mercedes running on the streets of New York was now moving forward with a clear purpose. Ryan Carter, who had suffered the biggest defeat of his life until a few hours earlier, was now making a new plan. There were no tears or pain in his eyes, just the fire of revenge burning. He looked at his watch. It was 1:30 a.m. But he couldn't sleep today. He saw Daniel Hunter's location on his phone and headed straight to his penthouse. Shortly after, he stopped in front of a high-rise building and parked his car in the parking lot. Danielle Hunter, her closest friend and a top lawyer, was already waiting for her. Ryan went in without saying a word, and Daniel placed a glass of wine in front of him as soon as he saw him. "Tell me everything," Daniel said in a serious tone. Ryan took a deep breath and said, "Emily and Lucas together ruined me. They turned my own father against me. Now they're running my company and I've been kicked out." Daniel replied coldly, "You have to avenge this. But don't get carried away by emotions and make a wrong move." Ryan said with a light laugh, "Wrong move? No, I'll just make the right move." The next day, Ryan met with his banking team. He knew that there would be many glitches in the way Lucas handled the company. "I want all the financial reports of my company for the last 6 months," she told her team. A few hours later, she got the report. Lucas had made many big wrong decisions, which were hurting the company internally. "Lucas is using the company to his advantage," Daniel said as he read the papers. "If we expose it properly, it can lead to huge legal trouble." Ryan smiled and said, "No, not yet. I want him to sink deeper. I wouldn't drop him so easily." Meanwhile, Lucas and Emily were confident of their victory. Sitting at the Carter estate, the two were clashing glasses of champagne. "Now that Ryan is gone, everything is in our hands," Lucas said with a laugh. Emily looked at him and said, "But he wasn't a man to give up so easily. I can't believe he walked so quietly." Lucas laughed and said, "You're thinking too much. Now that is over." But both of them did not know that the game was now in Ryan's hands. Ryan laid out his strategy for taking the next step. First, she met with her former investors. He knew that if he wanted to rebuild himself, he had to start a new business, a counter to Lucas's company. "I want investment, and I want to build something this time that will completely destroy Carter International," Ryan told his closest business partners. Investors immediately agreed to see his confidence. "We're with you, Ryan. Even without Carter International, you're a brand." 3 weeks later, Ryan launched his new company, Carter Legacy Holdings. At the launch event, the biggest personalities from the media and business world were present. As soon as the news reached Lucas and Emily, their faces flushed. "How can this be? How could he come back so quickly?" said Emily angrily. Lucas said nervously, "I don't know, but we have to stop him." But now, there was nothing to stop. Ryan had returned, and this time he was ready to snatch everything. The news of Ryan's return caused a stir in the entire business world. The launch of Carter Legacy Holdings was a major setback, especially for Lucas and Emily. The atmosphere at Carter International's head office was tense. Lucas was strolling through his meeting room angrily. "How could this man come back so quickly? We had completely ruined it." Emily, who had been quiet until now, said, "I already suspected he wouldn't give up so easily. But we don't need to worry, we are still in control." Lucas looked at him and said, "No, you don't understand. Ryan has not only come to return, he has come to take everything away from us. And we have to stop that." Ryan was in no mood to celebrate his victory. It was just the first step for him. He knew that real revenge would come when he would push Lucas and Emily into the same swamp of humiliation as they had done to him. At 11 p.m., Ryan was sitting in his penthouse watching an old video. This was footage of the night that took place at the Carter estate, where her father and brother had humiliated her. Daniel, who was sitting there, said, "Do you really want to hurt yourself by watching this video over and over again?" Ryan replied softly, "I'm not looking to hurt it. I'm looking to remember it, so that I don't forget why I started this fight." The next day, the New York Stock Exchange, Ryan's new business, was growing rapidly, and its value was increasing. Meanwhile, everyone could see the Carter International falling. The stock report showed Carter International shares drop by 15% after Carter Legacy Holdings' rapid rise. This news spread throughout the market. Media reporters, business channels, and investors began to discuss the matter. Will Carter International be able to maintain its position, or is this company now on a downhills? Lucas saw the news and immediately called his financial experts. "We have to stop this fall. Either way," she said angrily. Ryan saw the news and smiled faintly. This was just the beginning. He called his investment team and said, "We'll have to make another move. It's time we targeted Lucas's weakness." One person from the team said, "Are you saying that we should create a targeted acquisition plan against Carter International?" Ryan said in a cold voice. "Absolutely. And I want this plan to be such that Lucas and Emily have no way to escape." That same night, Carter Estate. Emily and Lucas stood on their lawn holding glasses of wine in hand. "Do you think he can really ruin us?" asked Emily. Lucas took a deep breath and said, "I don't know. But one thing is clear, we have to stop it as soon as possible, otherwise we will lose everything." Then Emily's phone received a call from an unknown number. "Emily, your time and Lucas's time is over." Emily was shocked. Who are you?" The phone was disconnected. The next day, Ryan summons Lucas to a secret meeting. "If you think I'll forget your tricks so easily, you're wrong," Ryan said directly. Lucas replied, "What are you trying to do, Ryan? Leave it all and move on." Ryan laughed, but there was a hardening in his eyes. "Shall I move on? You stole everything from me, Lucas. Now it's my turn." Lucas was made restless by Ryan's threat. He understood that Ryan had become no longer just a business rival, but a dangerous enemy. It had to be stopped. Otherwise, Carter International could be completely destroyed. Emily, who had been quiet until now, said to Lucas, "We have to do something immediately. If we delay any longer, Ryan will completely destroy us." Lucas said in a bitter voice, "So what do you think we should do?" Emily replied with a slight smile, "We have to trap Ryan in the same trap." At the same time, on the other hand, Ryan was preparing for his next move. Daniel entered Ryan's office and placed some documents in front of him. "These are the reports you asked for. Lucas has been misusing the company's funds, and if it came out, he wouldn't be able to avoid legal action." Ryan looked at the papers carefully and then smiled. It's time to beat Lucas and Emily at their own game. The next day, an emergency meeting was convened in Carter International's boardroom. Lucas and Emily arrived at the meeting, but as soon as they walked in, they saw that there were already media reporters and investors present. Lucas whispered to Emily, "What's going on?" "We were just called for a board meeting." Just then, Ryan came in through the door. "Welcome, Lucas," he said with a cold smile. Both Lucas and Emily were in shock. Ryan stood on stage and announced in front of everyone, "Today I am here to prove how Carter International has been ruined by incompetent leadership." She projected some documents on the screen, showing how Lucas had misused the company's funds. "This is evidence that proves that Lucas took thousands of dollars out of this company and spent it on his personal life," Ryan said. There was a stir in the entire boardroom. The faces of investors turned red with anger. "This is unacceptable! We can't run this company any longer if such scams continue to happen," said one investor. Lucas stood up and tried to defend himself. "It's all a lie. It's just a conspiracy to trap me." But it was too late. Ryan showed another document. If that was a lie, where did all this money come from all of a sudden? Both Lucas and Emily's faces flushed. The chairman of the board said in a serious tone, "It's clear that the company is no longer safe under your leadership, Lucas. We propose to remove you from your position as CEO with immediate effect." The board unanimously decided to remove Lucas. As soon as this announcement was made, Lucas and Emily understood that they were now on the brink of ruin. "You ruined my life, Ryan," shouted Lucas angrily. Ryan calmly replied, "I just gave you what you deserved. Get out of my way now." Lucas's defeat in the boardroom spread like wildfire throughout the business world. Carter International CEO Lucas Carter fired after financial scandal. The headline was flashing. Investors were panicked, and the company's stocks began to fall sharply. There were whispers among employees at Carter International's head office. Did you hear? Lucas was fired. Yes. Ryan Carter exposes him. What will happen now? Emily and Lucas were sitting in their office watching all this. Lucas's face was red and he was slamming things in anger. It can't be. I deserve this company. This is my kingdom. Emily said nervously, We've got to do something, Lucas. If we don't step up now, we'll lose everything. At the same time, on the other hand, Ryan was involved in a lavish dinner party which was held to celebrate his victory. Addressing her close friends and colleagues, she said, I've always learned that truth wins. When people conspire against you, the best revenge is to be better than them. The whole hall was filled with applause, but the battle wasn't over yet. The next morning, New York's largest business newspaper reported a sensational story. Ryan Carter under investigation for illegal business practices. Ryan saw the news in the morning and was shocked. What the is this? He said angrily. Daniel, who was sitting with him, said, It's a counterattack from Lucas and Emily. They're trying to trap you. Ryan read the newspaper carefully. The allegations came from an anonymous source and were just a rumor without any concrete evidence. But the media was on a boil about it. We have to respond to this immediately, Daniel said. Ryan replied coldly, No. I want Lucas and Emily to think they're winning, but I'm going to end this fight in my own way. That same night, Lucas and Emily were sitting in their penthouse. Now that Ryan has also been charged, investors will not believe him. His new company will also be ruined, Lucas said happily. Emily took a glass of wine and said, Now we just have to make sure he doesn't get out of it. But then, he got a call on his phone from an unknown number. What you both did was your biggest mistake. Lucas asked nervously, Who are you? The answer came from the other side of the phone. Someone who is one step ahead of your moves. Now see how I finish you. The phone was disconnected. The next morning, another big news broke out on the New York Stock Exchange. Lucas Carter accused of embezzlement and tax fraud. Ryan looked at Daniel and smiled as he read the news. The game is going to end. There was an earthquake in the business world of New York today. In the morning papers, Lucas Carter under federal investigation for fraud and embezzlement. Headlines like that were printed. Shares of Carter International fell on the New York Stock Exchange. There was chaos at the head office of Carter International. Investors were calling and asking for answers. The media was camping outside. Lucas and Emily couldn't understand how it all happened all of a sudden. Lucas angrily punched his table and shouted, It's impossible! How did all this happen? Emily had the same newspaper in her hands, from which the story of her ruin was printed. Ryan, it's all his doing, he said nervously. Lucas quickly picked up his phone and called his lawyer. We must immediately press this case. Do anything, but don't let the news spread. But now it was too late. At the same time, on the other hand, Ryan was enjoying his success. He was sitting at the headquarters of his company with his lawyer Daniel and financial experts. Daniel smiled and said, The trick you made was a master stroke. We tracked all of Lucas's erroneous transactions and reported them to federal authorities. Now he can't escape. Ryan comfortably sipped his coffee and responded, I've just given him a taste of his deeds. He thought he could beat me and move on, but now he will see what the real strength is. The next day, the FBI raided the Carter estate. Lucas and Emily had no idea that their ruin would happen so fast. FBI agents walked in and headed straight for Lucas. Mr. Carter, you have been charged with tax fraud and misappropriation of corporate funds. You have to come with us, said one agent. Lucas's face had discolored. He looked at his lawyer, but the lawyer shook his head helplessly. Emily was nervous. He told the agent, "It's all a misunderstanding. We are innocent." But no one listened to him. Within minutes, Lucas had been handcuffed. "You conspired to trap me, Ryan," Lucas said angrily, as he was being taken away. "But you forgot that I'm always ready to fight." Ryan, who was standing there watching all this, replied coldly, "You must also have the strength to fight, Lucas, and you have nothing left now." A few hours later, Emily was sitting in her car, completely shattered. She called Ryan, his voice trembling. "Ryan, I've made a big mistake. I need you. Please, can we meet?" Ryan thought for a moment, and then replied coldly, "It's late, Emily. You are reaping what you sown. I'm not going to save you now." He hung up the phone. Tears flowed from Emily's eyes. For the first time in her life, she realized how big a betrayal she had betrayed. After Lucas's arrest, there was a sensation in the business world of New York. Headlines like "Carter International CEO behind bars" were all over the news channel and newspaper. Investors, business partners, and stakeholders were now distancing themselves from Carter International. At the same time, Ryan wasn't sitting in his office enjoying his victory, but planning the next move. Daniel smiled and said, "Now that Lucas is in jail and the company is ruining, what's the next step?" Ryan replied as he took a sip of his whiskey, "I want to finish it completely. I want Carter International's name to be erased forever." Daniel shook his head. "So you're planning to buy it?" Ryan said with a slight laugh. "Absolutely. And I will buy it when it is at its lowest, when investors leave it thinking it is a sinking ship." At the same time, on the other hand, Emily was completely broken. Ever since Ryan hung up her phone, she knew she had no choice left. She was checking her bank accounts, and this brought tears to her eyes. All the accounts had been frozen. "It can't be," he said nervously. He called his lawyer. "I want my accounts back. I can't live like this." The lawyer took a deep breath and replied, "Sorry, following Mr. Carter's arrest, all banking institutions are looking at your financial activities with suspicion." "So what do I do now?" cried Emily. "I have a piece of advice," the lawyer said softly. "You should talk to Ryan. Maybe he can give you some financial help." Emily hung up the phone. He looked at himself in the mirror. She was the same woman who had once let Ryan down. That man was now his last hope. The next day, Ryan was sitting in his office when his assistant walked in and said, "Sir, Emily Carter has come to see you." Ryan put his phone down and said in a cold voice, "Send him in." Emily came in, looking much weaker and defeated than before. "Ryan, can we talk?" he said in a low voice. Ryan said without emotion, "What do you want, Emily?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I made a big mistake, Ryan. I didn't understand what I had lost. I just want one more chance." Ryan took a deep breath and then said, "You think you'll just come, apologize, and I'll take you back?" Emily nodded softly. "No, I know that I can't compensate for how much I've hurt you, but I just want you to help me. I have nowhere to go. I have nothing left." Ryan laughed, but there was pain and sarcasm in this laughter. "Do you remember when I told you that this ploy of yours would one day go against you?" Emily bowed her head. Ryan got up from his chair and said, "I didn't mind your infidelity, but your betrayal broke my soul. And today, when I see you in this state, I feel only one thing: contentment." Emily had tears in her eyes. "Is this your last answer?" Ryan said in a cold voice. "Yes." Emily quietly got up, walked up to the door, and then walked away without looking back. Emily's steps were faltering. She somehow got out of Ryan's office and reached her car. Tears were constantly flowing from her eyes. He looked at the screen of his phone. No calls, no messages. The Lucas for whom he had left Ryan was now languishing in prison. Bank accounts were frozen. Investors had turned their backs on him. And now Ryan, who was once his world, had completely rejected it. "What did I do?" he said to himself, resting his head on his steering wheel. Ryan, on the other hand, was watching from his office window, where Emily was sitting in her car. He knew the answer he gave was right for him. Daniel came into his cabin and said, "Don't you have any pity for him?" Ryan said without showing any emotion. "Pity? Nope. I can't give him that comfort after what he did to me." Daniel said with a slight smile, "So what's the next step?" Ryan closed his file and said, "Now I'm going to buy Carter International fully. This is the right way to erase what Lucas had created." 3 weeks later, there was another major stir at the New York Stock Exchange. Ryan Carter to acquire Carter International at a fraction of its original value. This news spread like wildfire in the entire business industry. After Lucas's arrest, the value of the company had plummeted. Investors were ready to sell the remaining shares. And now, Ryan had announced the purchase of his own brother's company. At the Carter estate, Emily saw the news on TV and a glass of water fell from her hand. No, it can't be," she muttered. Lucas, who was sitting in jail reading the news, sat with his head up. "Ryan, he took everything away from me." Addressing his team, Ryan said, "This company cheated me, insulted me, but now it will be mine, and I'll run it my way." Daniel asked, "Will you change the name of the company?" Ryan replied with a light laugh, "No, I'm going to stop it. The name will now be history. The last day of Carter International." Ryan stepped inside the office. This was the place from where he was evacuated. Today, he came to shut it down forever. He went to his old cabin and looked out of the window. This was where he suffered the greatest humiliation of his life. He turned, glanced one last time into the room, and then closed the door. Walking out, reporters surrounded him. "Mr. Carter, how do you feel that you bought your own family's company?" Ryan smiled and simply said, "An empire built by infidelity and deception always collapses. I just helped him fall." A new sensation had spread in the business world of New York. The collapse of Carter International and the historic victory of Ryan Carter. Now this company was going to be history. Ryan had completed the biggest revenge of his life. He wiped out the empire that had humiliated him. There was a crowd of media and journalists outside the headquarters of Carter International. Everyone wanted to cover this historic moment. Ryan got off his black Mercedes and walked slowly towards the building where he had once been disgraced. Daniel and his team were with him. As they got into the elevator, Daniel asked, "How do you feel?" Ryan said in a calm voice, "This is not just a victory for me, but justice." Top floor, CEO office. Ryan sat in the same chair where Lucas once sat and looked down on him. He looked at the files lying on his desk and then pressed the intercom. "Call the office staff." In a short time, the remaining employees of the company were gathered in the hall. They were all nervous. No one could understand what was going to happen now. Ryan stood before them and said, "This company is now finished." The whole hall was immersed in silence. "I have not come here to take revenge, but I have come to give you a new chance. I want people who are hardworking and honest to join me, and those who were part of this corrupt system should go out themselves." The staff heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, on the other hand, Emily was completely shattered. She sat in her hotel room with a bottle of wine in her hand, watching the news. "Ryan Carter officially dismantles Carter International, declares it history." She turned off the TV and looked at the pictures of her old life with tear-filled eyes. She thought, if she hadn't coveted, if she hadn't betrayed Ryan, she would have been a part of this victory today. But now, she had lost everything. The next day, Ryan made a statement to the media for the last time. "This is not just my victory, but a lesson for all those who thought they could win by cheating." A reporter asked, "So what's your next step now?" Ryan said with a smile, "Now I'm just going to focus on my future." Ryan refused to forgive his unfaithful wife, Emily, and let her face the consequences of her betrayal. He chose self-respect and dignity over giving a second chance to someone who had deceived him. But did he make the right decision? What do you think? Should Ryan have forgiven Emily and given her another chance? Or did he do the right thing by cutting toxic people out of his life forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. For more thrilling and emotional stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you never miss an update.